All right, let's get into it a little bit. So welcome yet again to today's webinar, Prepare to Pass Your Salesforce Certification. My name is Laurel Mitchell. I'm a Salesforce consultant and career coach with 10 years, or well, more than 10 years now of Salesforce experience and over 15 years of working in the nonprofit sector. I just got my 6th certification on Monday. I took the associate exam because I was curious what's in it. It's the newest one available. And so excited to tell you some pointers about that one. Former teachers, well, yes, I did start my career, whatever, 15 plus years ago as a high school teacher. And I've worked my way through a series of roles to where I am now. I work part-time, doing consulting work and this career coaching as well as certification tutoring services. If you are curious to see my services, there's a study guide, there's a self-assessment, there's a bunch of other materials on my website. So please do find me at lm-consults.com. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the details of what I can offer at the end of the webinar today. Otherwise, please, like I said earlier, let me know in the chat if you have any questions or comments. I love when folks share resources with each other because there's so much out there. Sometimes I'm not even aware of some of the newer like training materials that are out on the market. So please do feel free to participate in the chat. So let's just start by talking about Salesforce careers in general. Obviously a very good career path to explore. I don't know how you all got to know about Salesforce. I know some people probably in the Talent Stacker program or heard about Salesforce in a podcast. However you found Salesforce as a career path, you're probably excited by a few things, right? It's somewhat lucrative. The average salaries can be anywhere from 60K to over 150K, depending on what kind of job you have in the ecosystem. I think what excites me the most about the Salesforce industry is it's a fairly robust industry, even during a recession, during the pandemic. And now when you see places like Meta and all these other tech companies laying off a lot of folks, Salesforce has continued to grow as opposed to shrink during these times. And so the latest report says that there's going to be 4.2 million jobs created in the ecosystem by 2024, with 500, almost 500,000 jobs this year. And the roles range widely in terms of seniority and technical expertise. So even if you're new to the industry or you're just starting out, there could be a place for you to start on this journey. Now, part of getting into a Salesforce career may involve getting a Salesforce certification. And so if you're not familiar with the certification process or you're not really sure what it entails, these are really formal exams that show your theoretical knowledge. I like to make sure that folks are really aware up front that this is not a measure of your practical knowledge. Nothing is hands-on in this exam. It's very formal and very focused on the theory behind Salesforce architecture and applications. Each exam is broken into separate topics. So when you're studying for your exam or when you're considering what exams to take look at the topic breakdowns, see what's included in the exam, how much each topic is weighted, because some topics have a higher weight than other topics. They also have different passing scores. Some are in the 60% range, some are in the 70% range. So all of these different factors may weigh in your decision as to what certification to get, or if you even need to get a certification at all. There is a registration fee. It ranges anywhere from $75 to $2,000 if you're taking the technical architect exam. Most are $200 to register, and the retakes are half of that. So the retake would be $100 for a $200 exam. The associate exam is $75 to take the first round, and it's free for your retake. So that one is a really nice warm up to the different exams. Sorry, I can see someone writing on my screen, so I'm going to figure out how to, yeah, disable. There we go. There are also vouchers available if the cost is something that's going to be an impediment for you. You can get them through communities, or you can attend what they call certification days webinar, and at the end of that you will get a voucher. I think now they're offering $40 off, but that's definitely an option if the cost is a problem for you. Great. You're probably saying, well, there's all these certifications out there. I don't know what to take. Just tell me where to start. A lot of career paths do start with the admin certification. So if you're considering, what should I do, the admin or even now the associate exam might be a really good starting place for getting a certification. Okay, so yeah, you can also get vouchers through various programs. So someone's calling out the MOM project and the RISE Scholarship Program. There's also like Pep Up Tech and a number of programs that offer vouchers for the participants. It's a great tip. Thank you. All right, I don't know how to get rid of this highlight. I've never had anyone write on my screen before. There we go. Perfect. There's always something new in these webinars, right? Great. So, do you need a certification to get a job? Well, it depends. It's if any of you went to college and were applying for jobs right after graduating, you may remember, some jobs will ask for a certain number of years of experience, and sometimes you are, when you don't have experience, you want to bolster, prop up your job application with credentials. So it's the same thing in Salesforce. Whether or not you need a certification depends a lot on the role that you're applying for, your timeline and availability, and especially your experience, both your Salesforce experience as well as your IT and industry experience. So those of you who might be late career changers, if you have, a decade of experience in your industry or you have a technical background, you might not need a certification depending on the job that you're applying for. Now, if you are brand new to the industry, you don't have a lot of transferable experience, or you just don't have a lot of time to try to apply for various jobs and worry about getting your foot in the door, then a certification might be a way to just make your application a little bit more noticeable to the hiring managers. The other thing I noticed is when I got like my third certification, the recruiters started coming to me on a regular basis over LinkedIn and offering me various roles that were a better fit than the ones that I was applying for just on my own. Oh, it's $140 now for the cert days. That's great. I thought it was only 40, but it's 140. And thank you, Kim, for sharing the link to the Trailhead Salesforce certification days. Perfect. Yeah, so if you sign up for one of those webinars, you'll get the voucher from attending. So, do you need a certification? Maybe. It kind of depends. It's really all about what you bring to the table and what your goals are in this industry. So, which certification path is right for you? I would say consider your long-term career goals. Look at, if you want to go into the sales industry, for example, maybe you want to get the Sales Cloud certification, or if you have a strong coding background and you want to do developer work, then you'd want to look at some of the developer certifications. It really depends on not just where you are now, but where you want to go in the long term. So consider that when you're deciding which certification path is the right one for you. Also consider that some certifications have prerequisites. So the BA certification, business analyst, you have to have the admin cert in order to sign up for it. So there are a number of certifications that have prerequisites. And so you may want to determine your certification strategy based on, if I eventually want to get my Sales Cloud cert, I have to take the admin first. So the admin is where I'm going to start. Another thing is different exams have different passing scores. That's one thing I wasn't super aware of before I started taking a lot of these exams is, for example, sales and service have different passing scores. And so the one with the lower passing score just through probability and statistics is easier to pass than the one with the higher passing score. The BA exam, they raised the passing score. It used to be in the 60s, now it's like 72% to pass. So all those things should factor into your decision as to which certification to take and when. So maybe if it's a harder exam with a higher passing score, you might want to take that after you've taken some of the other ones that seem a little bit more attainable for where you are right now. And some exams share the same content. Most of those consultant cloud exams share a few of the same sections about like Salesforce platform fundamentals or some things about development operations, things like that. So it's often beneficial to take exams that share the same content close together. Or like the admin exam and the platform app builder exam share a lot of the same content. So I usually recommend to folks, if you've taken your admin exam and you want to get another cert, consider taking the platform app builder within a few months of your admin exam while that material is still fresh in your mind. I also wanted to show you, in terms of determining your certification path, Salesforce Ben has this map of all the different certifications, and the lines between will show you what's a prerequisite and what's more an optional certification, right? So the newest associate exam is not a prerequisite for the administrator, but it's a recommended first step if you need something to warm up before you take the admin exam. That's why that's the dotted line. Otherwise, the solid lines represent actual prerequisites. So the administrator is the prerequisite for all of these other exams. And platform app builder is a prerequisite for some of these other exams. And I popped the link in chat if you want to grab this certification path for yourself, or you can just Google Salesforce Ben certification paths. I find this diagram to be very helpful in my own strategy. Yeah, I know a lot of us have been getting the associate cert lately. I think my 2 cents on it are it's definitely not a substitute for the administrator exam, because the administrator exam I still think is a bit of the industry standard for junior level jobs. Associate, though, I think I could see a lot of benefits to taking it before the admin exam, especially because these exams are so formal and the questions are worded in a specific way. I think taking something like the associate before taking the admin will get you used to the way that the exams are proctored, the way that your questions are asked, and the type of material that will be covered in the exams, although the material is not necessarily the exact same between the associate and the admin. The admin is a little bit more advanced than the associate, but I think it's a nice first step if you're working towards the administrator certification and you just kind of want to test how are you doing in terms of your prep and what is it going to be like when I take the real admin exam. Yeah, it does help. I'm glad I took it myself. I was, a lot of people ask me, should I take it? Should I not? I'm not sure. And I was like, I don't really know because I haven't taken it. And after taking it, I can say, I think it's maybe, 30 to 40% of the intensity and content as the administrator exam. So it's not like, oh, I took the associate, I'll get my admin next week. But it's a really good warm up and it will get you used to a lot of the procedures and logistics of taking a certification exam. Oh, and someone's sharing Trailhead Academy boot camps for the associate exam. Thank you so much. Yeah, please do continue to share resources in the chat. help each other out. That's what we're all here for, right? So, which path is right for you? You want to consider your long term goals, where you are now, what you've been studying, what you might want to take next, that kind of thing. It does help, when you have three, four, five, six plus certifications, as that number grows, you are more attractive to hiring managers and recruiters. It's again, it's not necessary. It's not like you have to have a certain number of certifications to be a consultant or to have a specific title, but it definitely helps in the job search process when you have more certifications or when you have specific certifications that might be desired in the field that you're pursuing. So, like if you're pursuing a sales career, or you want to work with as an admin in the sales industry, having the Sales Cloud cert is going to be very beneficial to you. So, what does my certification journey look like? I thought it might be nice to share because I think a lot of us get on LinkedIn or on social media and we start comparing ourselves to other people and we're like, oh wow, they have all these certs, or it seems like they passed that exam so easily. What am I doing wrong? In reality, some of us have been working at this for a long time and we didn't pass every exam that we took. So the first time I took the Salesforce Administrator exam was in 2016. I had been an accidental admin at that time for about 3 years before I sat for it. And I was thinking like, oh, I've been doing this work for so long. How hard could the exam possibly be? I completely underestimated the fact that it's a formalized exam with a very specific structure and a very specific way that they word the questions. And I was not prepared. So I failed the first attempt at my admin. Yeah, currently an accidental admin. Great. Yeah, I failed my first attempt when I took the admin exam in 2016. I missed it by a couple questions, but I think the biggest gap that I had was just not studying things like vocabulary, and I hadn't done any practice tests. I was relying solely on my own experience and my ability to apply my knowledge without really considering that it's a theory exam. Once I had taken it and I realized, I was like, oh, I really have to learn, this language and I have to practice the questions. I did pass it on my second attempt. I think I took it like 8 weeks later, something like that. After that, I got my advanced admin and my platform app builder. And at that point, I was able to get a different job, which is a little bit more advanced in my career. And after that, I got nonprofit cloud consultant. There was one Dreamforce. I took like 4 exams in 1 week. And I passed most of them, but I failed my Service Cloud consultant exam. Again, I missed it by a couple questions. I was planning to retake it after, but life happens and I got distracted by all the other new exams. So I got Sales Cloud, and then my most recent is the associate exam. I still do want to get my service. I think that'll be a good one to add to my collection or my repertoire. I'm also looking at the user experience and strategy designer certifications because my kind of career path or my expertise that I'm building is really about consulting and understanding how to take someone's vision and business needs all the way through to a final product. And so I think the UX and the design strategy designer are good pieces of that, in addition to the various cloud exams. Yeah, CPQ. The other thing is also to consider how much material is available for these exams. So like Sales and Service Cloud, these have focus on forced practice exams. There's a lot of study guides. The nonprofit cloud consultant was actually kind of difficult to prepare for because there weren't a lot of materials out there at the time. Now, my friend Sarah at Technopath has a study guide and some practice exams for the nonprofit cloud certification, which is super helpful. But if you don't have a lot of materials to prepare, it's kind of hard to know if you're ready or not. Oh yeah, you have to renew your certification. Did I put that in my I I missed my bullet. You have to take annual maintenance exams. In fact, I've taken the admin 3 or 4 times in my life because I missed a maintenance exam, and they're not very forgiving when you miss a maintenance exam. You will lose your certification if you don't keep it up to date. So that's one thing to be really aware of is you have to take these. The nice thing is a lot of them have the same maintenance. So like Platform App Builder has the same maintenance as Administrator, I believe, or it has the same as the consultant clouds. But you definitely have to take those. Now it's nice because it's all in Trailhead. You just have to complete it by a certain day. It's not too hard, the maintenance exams. The hardest part is remembering to do them. So it's in Trailhead. It usually takes anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour to do a little bit of hands-on practice and to read the the release notes for the one that you're doing. And apparently the associate doesn't require a renewal or maintenance. That's really handy. But the admin and everything else definitely does. So you want to stay on top of that. Renewal exams aren't proctored. They're just through Trailhead. So like I said, the biggest thing to do is just to remember to take them. I like to take mine early. I was thinking I might host get your renewal exam webinar or something like that where we can all just sit and do it together. But yeah, you just need to remember to take them in Trailhead every year. So don't be discouraged if you fail. Um, don't be discouraged if it feels like other people are doing things that you're not. Everyone's journey is unique. And if you're putting in effort and you're pursuing this on a regular basis, you will be successful. And yeah, I really do believe that is people who come into this industry tend to be really self-driven, tend to be natural problem solvers and curiosity seekers. So I think if you have that kind of mindset that you're going to be persistent and that you're going to learn something along the way, you will be successful. Sometimes it just takes a couple tries. The other thing I tell people is it's not like when you get your cert, it doesn't say like, oh, certified administrator after 5 attempts. It just says that you're certified, or it doesn't say like certified administrator with a 66% passing score. If you get your certification, you get your certification, and it's okay if it takes you a little bit of time to get there. Yeah, and especially the admin exam is you have to prepare for it, not just in terms of the content, but also psychologically. The best things that you can do if you know that you have test taking anxiety or you're not a great test taker, the best things you can do are take practice exams and try to mimic the real testing environment as much as possible. So when you take a full practice exam, close all of your browser tabs, time yourself, don't allow you to have any notes on the desk, things like that. The closer you are to the real experience, then the more prepared you're going to feel going into it. The other thing I tell folks is when you're getting ready for your exam, don't plan to cram it all at the last minute. Really take as much time as you can to take care of anything that's going to cause you anxiety. So if you're taking it online, install the Sentinel software early. Make sure you complete all of the prerequisites like the biometric profile and all that. Read through what you're going to have as your desk set up. Remember to bring an ID. Just do all that in advance so that way when you actually get to the exam, you can focus on just taking the exam instead of being worried about all these other things. Yeah, Focus on Force is a great resource. They're my favorite practice exams. I highly recommend getting them. One thing to be careful about is when you're doing practice exams, you don't want to get in the habit of memorizing the questions. So that's the other thing is I usually tell folks, take a full practice exam Not more than one a day, and don't take the same one back to back. Focus on Force gives you 6 different versions. So if you take version 1 on Monday, take version 2 on like Wednesday, take version 3 on like Friday. It kind of depends on the timeline that you have between where you're starting and when you want to take the exam. If you have 6 weeks, take one a week. Let yourself actually learn and prepare so that when you're improving on your test scores, it's a true reflection of your knowledge as opposed to just a reflection of how much you remember that question from the last time, right? So I'm just catching up on chat. Yeah, I do think, especially for test taking anxiety, taking the associate exam first is kind of like a nice warm up to get used to that level of anxiety and that just all the steps that you're going to go through to take these exams. So when you're sitting for the admin, you'd be like, okay, I've done this before. I remember the check-in process. I remember what it felt like so that you can better calm your nerves when you're taking the higher level exams. So when you're preparing for your exam, don't cram it all. Give yourself a timeline, set specific goals and milestones, and reward yourself along the way. And I always tell folks to take it one topic at a time, starting with the topics that are most foundational or the ones that have really high weights. Usually those are the same, but that's one thing to look at the study guide and see. For example, an administrator, the config and setup section is 20% versus productivity and collaboration is 7. So you definitely want to prioritize the config and setup over productivity and collaboration. You always want to focus on the biggest sections first, and then you can always fill in the gaps as you go along and you have more time. So yeah, take it one topic at a time, especially for the admin exam. There's a large volume of information that they're going to ask you to retain. And so the best strategy for retaining all of that information is taking it just piece by piece, learning about it through Trailhead or on a study guide, or I see a few different resources called out like Emily McCall's Udemy course or David Massey, a lot of folks like Mike Wheeler. I have my own study guide coming out. Well, it's out, and then I have a video series that I'll be releasing in the next couple of weeks. But whatever material you're using, first use it to understand the concepts, then apply it hands-on in Trailhead. One thing I do want to show folks is in Trailhead, you might not be aware that for hands-on practice, there's more than just the super badges and the regular modules. There are these things called projects. So if you search for a term like reports, right? What you want to do is in the search results, click this more button and more again. And down here in the content type, choose project. And these are all hands-on Trailhead challenges, and they're much shorter than the super badges. So these are, you see, like 15 minutes or 40 minutes. Some are a little over an hour, but most of them are shorter, much shorter than the super badges, and it's good to get some hands-on practice. So understand the concept, practice it hands-on, and then do practice exam questions. So then you go to focus on force, pick out the topic, questions for the topic that you're studying, and drill a few of those so that you're understanding what it means, that you know what the screens look like, and then that you also know what it looks like on the real test, because all those are going to be a little bit different. And again, this just goes back to the strategy for retaining the information. The more times that you interact with the same concept and the more different ways that you see it or interact with it, the more likely you are to recall it when you're on the exam. So having seen the screen, having talked about it, having seen a diagram, having seen questions, all of those will contribute to your ability to be successful. So we talked about getting hands-on. The other thing about getting hands-on is a lot of folks wait for Trailhead to say, okay, here's the hands-on challenge, right? To open up a playground. I actually recommend, as you're going through the modules or as you're reading through your study materials, open up a Trailhead playground, go into setup and see if you can follow along with the information as you're reading it so that you get that experience of, okay, I read about field types, but then I also saw the screen with the different field types on it. And I remember what step that was in the field creation process, right? So it's all that, those different kinds of learning, using all your senses will help you remember it better for the exam. Track your progress so you can identify any gaps in your understanding. Look at your topic scores and the weights. So if you're scoring, it's like if you're scoring 50% in both config and setup and productivity collaboration, because they have different weights, you still want to prioritize the config and setup section because there are more questions basically that you're leaving on the table. Your return on your investment is going to be higher for the bigger sections than the smaller ones. And don't just look at your most recent score, but look over time and see how consistent you are. So a section where you've been down, 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 up, you probably still want to make sure that you can stay up as opposed to maybe a different section you're kind of like middle, 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 high, high, middle, right? That sounds like you're probably more consistent and that you would actually score mid to high on the real exam. So don't just look at your most recent performance, but look at your performance over time. In that vein, I wanted to share, I have this exam tracker template. When I share it, it's going to be read-only. All you need to do to use it yourself is to make a copy, and then you can edit this and enter your own scores. I'll put the link in the chat so that you can use this for yourself, and it will, oops. What I look for the most here is the number missed. So if I get, like we were saying, 50% in config and setup and 40% in productivity collaboration, even though I'm scoring higher on this section, I should still study it over the other section because I'm only missing 2 questions in productivity collaboration, but I'm missing 6 in config and setup. So your return on your investment for the time that you're spending is going to be a lot higher in the sections where you're missing more. And then finally, stay accountable to your goals. Especially studying for the administrator exam, because there's so much content that you have to learn and because it's going to be new most of the time to folks who are studying for this exam, you're going to want some way to stay accountable and some way to stay motivated. I've talked to a lot of folks who say, you know, I've been doing this 5 hours a day for 6 weeks and I'm so burnt out. I don't even know if I can take this exam. Give yourself time to really understand and absorb the concepts and figure out how you're going to stay motivated the whole time through. Get a study partner or a mentor or join a study group. I'll show you at the end, I'm offering a group class in February for exactly that reason, or you can hire me as a tutor. But in general, just find some way to stay accountable, and not just to stay accountable, but also to celebrate your milestones and your success. Passing the exam isn't necessarily the only thing to get excited about, you know, raising your practice test scores, or I've gotten through half of the material, whatever it is, celebrate the little wins along the way so that you don't lose motivation and you don't burn out. Yeah, I'll tell you. So the next slide, I think, yeah, exam logistics. How did you know? You were my perfect segue. I know, I feel the same way about, like, I just want to know what to expect. So I put this slide together. When you actually take the exam, you have the option of going to a testing center or taking it online. Some benefits of going to the test center are they let you use scrap paper while you're there. So some people like myself, I really like to write notes as I go through, or I like to draw a diagram of especially the longer scenario-based questions. I often like to draw out, you know, like the director reports to the VP, that kind of thing I need to visualize. So having that scrap paper can be really beneficial at the testing center. The other thing about the testing center is if you run into any technical difficulties or things like that, you do have people on hand who can come and help you right away and in person. That was one thing I hadn't realized. And then I took my associate exam and I had so many technical issues. I managed to disable my keyboard an hour before the exam, so I couldn't use the keyboard on my laptop. I had to use a USB keyboard. It paused 10 minutes in because apparently my video wasn't working. So I had to wait for them to reset it. And then it didn't reset correctly because the time changed. And that, if you already have test taking anxiety, that can really throw you off. So being in a testing center sometimes can be beneficial for the scrap paper and also for the technical assistance. Taking it online can be helpful because you don't have to go anywhere. You know, you can just take it from home. It's a lot more comfortable, things like that, but you don't get the scrap paper, and troubleshooting is all going to be through like chat, and you can't you're just going to have to do more on your own. So be aware of those two options. You schedule all the exams through Web Assessor, so you start from the Trailhead credentials area, but it will redirect you to this third-party site where you have to make a new login. So that's something to be aware of, that Web Assessor is legit. It is the platform that Salesforce uses for testing. So just be aware. Like I said before, you want to review the requirements in advance. Like I had to cover my external monitor with a sheet so that I was up to code when I took the exam. There's a number of things like that. You just want to know what to expect before you actually launch into the exam. And then once you press submit, you will see pass fail on the screen immediately. So they'll tell you you passed or they'll tell you you failed. They will not show you any other feedback at that point. You will get emailed later your topic breakdowns, how much you scored on each, but you won't see which questions you got wrong or anything like that. That's the only information you get is pass fail right away. And then how much did you score on each section will be emailed later, along with the fancy certificate that you can print. Yeah, exactly. It happened to some other people with the camera getting trouble. For the associate exam, I don't think Focus on Force has practice yet, but if you look on Trailhead, if you click into the associate exam, there are two different trail mixes. The one on the right has actual questions in the module. That's what I used to see it, what kind of content was going to be on the exam. I will say it's a little bit minimal. There's like 4 questions per topic. The real exam is 40 questions, but it was a good kind of test or proxy to see how prepared I was for the real exam. So that was on Trailhead for the associate exam. Oh, you had a notes section. That's so great. Yeah, I know they've been working on getting notes, but the thing is, if it's notes on your computer, you're pretty limited to the interface. You might have to type it in or something, versus some people like me, I like to draw, and I like to diagram and things like that. So the scrap paper can be really helpful. And online used to require an external camera, but since COVID, they've dropped that requirement. So you can do it with just the internal camera, like the one that I'm using right now. So let's talk about how to use your materials. I get a lot of questions, what's the difference between the different practice exams? What's the most accurate practice exam to take? My personal feelings about it, having used lots of different study materials for myself, is that Focus on Force really is the industry standard for most exams. The questions are going to be the most up to date, and I think they're close to the actual exam itself. The Web Assessor practice exams, I will say one thing is that I think they're worded more closely to the real exam because they're from Salesforce. They're going to sound exactly the same as the questions on Salesforce, like when you take it for real. But sometimes the content is a little out of date. Like I've noticed the admin exam practice from Web Assessor has some questions on it that I remember answering in 2016. So just to be aware of that, I think Focus on Force content is way more up to date. And then the Web Assessor, I've heard some feedback about Focus on Force that the questions weren't worded as hard as they were on the real exam. So in terms of the wording and the way that they're asking the questions, I think Web Assessor might be a little bit more accurate. And for admin, I'm showing you my recommended study order for the different topics. Object Manager and Config and Setup are the two biggest sections. They're both 20%, and I consider them to be these foundational topics. So like if you don't understand Salesforce architecture in the Object Manager Lightning App Builder section, you're not going to understand service and support or sales and marketing or even some automation. You really need to understand the foundational concepts of like what's an object, what's a field, what's a record, that kind of thing, before you can learn some of the other stuff. So that's the one I usually recommend starting with. And configuration and setup is not just a big section, it's also, a lot of people find it really difficult to try to understand the different security settings and the way to apply them. And it's also foundational. So, concepts that come up in config and setup will come up in the other sections as well. So I always recommend doing those two first, and then going into things like data analytics management and automation, and then some of the more application sections like service, sales, and productivity collaboration. I guess the other thing I will mention is with Focus on Force, you get not just the full practice exams, but you also get the topic exams. In addition to being conscious about how often you're taking the same full practice exam, I also say the topic exams are really great for when you're in study mode, when you're trying to learn new material or that you're trying to confirm that you understand a section. Those I will tend to have my notes open. I'll go into my Trailhead playground, or when it's like grant access to hierarchies is on by default for all standard objects. I'll be like, is it? Let me go see. Let me go into setup and check it. And I'll check my answers at the end of every question for the topic ones, but for the full exams, you really want to mimic the real world. So check your answers at the end, don't look at your notes, and don't go into Trailhead. So when are you ready? I would say if you're consistently scoring over 70 or even over 75% for the admin exam, then you're probably ready. And if you're scoring that high, make sure it's also because you are truly understanding the questions and that you can reason through why it was A and not C, that kind of thing, as opposed to, oh, I remember this last time, cloud kicks, I remember that, make sure that you really are understanding why it's one choice over another choice. And if you've been using Focus on Force a whole lot, I would say you can gut check with the Web Assessor, or there's a free exam from sfdcstudy.org. These, like I said, the material might be slightly out of date from both of these because SFDC Study is free. It doesn't get updated as often, but it's a nice checkpoint if you've been doing a lot of Focus on Force and you want to do something different just to confirm that you are scoring as high as you think you are. Those two are great options. I also see that Dave Massey has an associate exam, and I know, was it SaaS Guru has one? There's a number of third parties who make practice exams for the Salesforce certs, so that's always a good thing is, if you've been using one provider's practice exam over and over again, gut check with another just to confirm that you are scoring the way that you think you're scoring. And then I wanted to also talk a little bit about exam strategy. So when you're in the exam and you're trying to answer the questions, there are three pointers that I would give. Because these are formal exams about theory, I compare it a lot to the SAT, right? It's like, it's not just what's the correct answer, it's the best answer. So often you'll see questions where several, if not all of the options that they give you would meet the requirement that they're asking in the question. And it's up to you to figure out what's the best option out of the ones that will work. And the best option for this exam is the one that has the most security, the most efficiency, and the most scalability. So I often tell folks, as you're reading through the possible answers, try to imagine doing what they're describing and decide, could I do this for 100 people or 100 fields or whatever it might be? What if someone who doesn't have good intentions tries to do it? Um, that kind of thing. Or does it sound like it's going to take a lot of time? If it sounds like it's prone to security issues, or it's going to take a lot of time, or it's not really scalable, then that's probably not the correct answer. The other thing is Salesforce is never going to make themselves look bad. So, if a question is like, how do you reset a user's password? You have to contact support. That's not the answer. So again, just imagine doing it and then what your reaction would be as an admin. And if your reaction is, wow, that sounds horrible, it's probably not the right answer. The other thing is to look for pairs and opposites, especially in the choose two or choose three out of five kind of questions where you have to choose multiple answers. A lot of times they'll have answers that are completely the opposite of each other. Look out for that. And then when you recognize that, then you've eliminated some potential choices. Like the other day, we were doing a question and A and B were literal opposites, C and D were literal opposites. So now you know it has to be either A or B and either C or D. It's not going to be C and D or A and B. So now you've already kind of eliminated some potential options just by looking at the way that the answers are phrased. And the other thing I've noticed over the years of coaching and taking these exams myself is they like to throw in what I'm calling absolute language. So there could be an answer that is correct except for one word, and that would be like any, all, never, always, none, that kind of thing. When you see these words, flag it for yourself and say, is it really truly always, or is there even one time where this doesn't happen? Or is it really truly never, or is there one time where it does happen, right? If they say always and there's an exception, then that answer is not true. Like there's one that I see often: when you convert a lead, you get an account, a contact, and always an opportunity, something like that. Well, usually you get an opportunity, but it's not required. There are cases where you would convert a lead and you wouldn't make an opportunity from them. So in that case, you wouldn't choose the always one. So that's a lot of my tips and pointers. Now I want to share a few resources, and I'm so glad that folks along the way have been sharing their own resources. Please do continue to put those in the chat so everybody can benefit from our shared knowledge. Y'all already talked about certification days. I'm glad you are aware of this resource. As we were saying, it's a multi-hour webinar. I want to say they're like 3 or 6 hours, something. It's like half a day that you take this webinar, and then at the end they give you a voucher. There are also study guides. I have my own study guide that I've developed over the years with background reading, bulleted lists of the key concepts, vocabulary, and some diagrams. So definitely look out for various study guides. In Trailhead, I don't necessarily recommend the full admin beginner trail, but there are some study trails that are mostly focused on the practice questions and things like that. So I recommend those trails. And there's a trail mix that I made with the few modules that I pulled out for preparation. Y'all already called out Dave Massey, Mike Wheeler. There's also Caitlin Newen has some training videos on YouTube. I can't remember her name again, Emily something. But there's a number of folks who have videos, either paid or free, that you can watch and learn from. We talked about focus on force and SFDC study. The important thing is to make sure that you have resources for understanding the key concepts as well as applying them to real practice exam questions. Yeah, a lot of folks are recommending the certification days. So, I mean, even if you just have it on in the background and you do it for the voucher, it's probably still good use of your time. Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have the link shared again in the chat. So if you need to sign up, please click that link and look for the next available session. I did want to also share some resources that are available through my consulting business. So I'm going to be hosting a group class in February. We'll start on the 9th, which is a Thursday, and we'll go for 4 weeks. We'll do an hour and a half every week, so 6 hours total, and we'll work through the concepts here. So the first will be an overview and then Object Manager Lightning App Builder, and then we'll do config and setup data analytics. Then the next week we'll do automation and service, and then we'll do sales and productivity collaboration. We'll also share a study guide with everyone who signs up and all the other resources that I have available. I know this is a bit in the future, but if you have some time or you have friends who are going to be taking it in the spring, I wanted to tell you all about it now so you can sign up before all the slots are gone. And the link to sign up for that one, you can use the tinyurl.com/prep2pass, and that should take you right to the service page. Yes, thank you, Mary. If you can't wait until February or you need different types of training, I have a reports and dashboards training, a workshop next week at about the same time. You can sign up for that one at salesforcereports.eventbrite.com. That one is going to be an hour and a half session where we'll go in depth how to build reports and dashboards, best practices, and I want to leave a lot of time for folks to ask questions about anything that they're specifically working on. So if you're pulling lists for end of year reports, or you're responsible for getting all the mailing lists for Black Friday or something like that, this is definitely the session for you. The other thing I can offer are one-on-one tutoring sessions. I just charge by the hour, and I tailor the sessions to your previous preparation, your exam timeline, and your availability. So I usually do about an hour a week with folks, again, depending on your timeline and your goals, to get you prepared. And in those sessions, we'll go through a little bit of understanding the concepts, and then we'll drill the practice exam questions together, which I find to be really helpful. It's a lot like, when you're playing a sport or an instrument, it's like that dress rehearsal or scrimmage, right? It's when you're practicing the real thing, but in a safe environment with an expert who can help give you tips and correct you so that you feel really prepared when you're going into the real thing. If you're interested in one-on-one tutoring, go ahead and book a free 30-minute call with me on my Calendly. That's calendly.com/lmconsults-30 minutes. That will get you on my calendar, and we'll talk a lot about, what have you already done to prepare? I work with a lot of folks who failed the exam before and need a little bit of extra prep as they're getting ready to retake it. Or if you're taking it for the first time and you just want a little extra support, the tutoring sessions can be very helpful. The other thing I'm offering is the study guide. I've been so happy people have been downloading it. It's something I'd worked on for years and years and years. I was going to give you all a sneak peek, and then I also wanted to share the link to it. Let me grab that off of my website. Yeah, you can get everything on my website as well. It's the lm-consults.com. If you're in the certification tab, it's here, and I will share this link in the chat. The nice thing is I made this a PDF download. That was a lot of feedback I got from folks like, I just want to print it. I just want something with bulleted lists, all of that good stuff. So that's what I have for you in the study guide. Yeah, so I know we're coming up on the hour, so if you need to jump to another call, please feel free to. I'll email this recording to the whole list by the end of today. But thank you so much for joining. The other thing is I want to make sure that everyone is aware, because video series tend to be really helpful for studying, I've actually made my own video series. I have my tutoring students beta testing it right now, and I'm going to launch it for real the week of Thanksgiving, so November 21st. Sometime during that week, I'll be launching it, probably with a discount to start. So keep an eye on your email inbox for more information about the video series so you can sign up and get that resource. Great. Yeah, I see some questions about the exam changing on December 5th. So that's one thing to be aware of. Salesforce certification retake policy. Here it is. So the exams technically update every release, and it's always a release behind. So right now we're in the summer 22 version of the exam. It will close on the 5th, and there's usually, you know, a 4 or 5 day waiting period until it reopens. So it'll open again probably like the 9th or 10th of December. The important things here, the exam doesn't change very much at all. Usually it's maybe 1 or 2 questions that will be different. I imagine MFA might come up and enhanced domains, perhaps. Those are the biggest changes in the next release, the winter 2023, the one that'll be coming out after this one. But otherwise, it's basically the same as the previous exam. If you have failed the exam or you do fail the exam, you get 3 attempts per release window. So if you've taken your exam anytime between August and today, you may want to get your 2nd or 3rd attempt in before the 5th so that you can refresh your attempts. Ideally you just pass, but the reality is some people do fail it multiple times, and if you want to make sure that you have the most opportunity to take it again, you want to get your attempts in before the 5th. Awesome. I'm trying to see what other resources I opened here. Oh, the study guide. I did want to show you what's in the study guide because I think some people always want to know, you know, what the heck am I actually buying before you buy it? So the study guide looks like this when you download it. Like I said, it's a PDF for your personal use, not to distribute, but in here I give you a recommended schedule. So what topic to study if you want to do it in 4 weeks or in 8 weeks, about how long the Trailhead modules will take you, and then I tell you how long I would actually set aside for each section, because sometimes Trailhead says 25 minutes, but I know that there's a lot of content, and so I would actually recommend a whole hour on that section. Yeah, no, I think if you're taking it on the 15th and you've been working through your materials that you've been practicing with Focus on Force or another different practice exam, and you're really understanding and reasoning through your questions the way that you're answering it, and you're scoring, 75, 80%, you're probably going to be ready for the real thing on the 15th. Within each section, I'll show you there are links back to Trailhead or to help articles. I tried to pick and choose just the specific sections that I thought would be helpful, because sometimes you don't need to read, all 6 modules in Trailhead to really understand the concept. So I tried to be very specific about what you really need to learn, and then what concepts you should have gotten out of it, some vocabulary, and I also include diagrams because, why doesn't Trailhead have this diagram? I don't know, but I made it for you because you need to know the Salesforce standard objects and their relationships. And for me, I know I'm very visual, so I needed something like this to look at when I was studying. This also includes, at the end, there are full vocabulary lists. So if you're into reviewing and you want to just practice looking at the terms and the definitions, that's all in here as well. So again, you can get that at this address and download it for your studying. Do I have tips, resources for people who would just like projects that provide kind of like figure it out type of training? Yeah, exactly. I need to get the name of that. There are some YouTube people who have example scenarios that they're working through, like example organizations that they have you prepare with. I always say picking a topic that or a scenario that you actually understand and um, identify with is going to be the most effective way to learn this. So, if you run your own business, I talk to a lot of people who are small business owners and are looking to get into Salesforce. Can you create a dev org that would help you run your business better? Or if there's something personal to you, some of my favorite projects were I worked with a woman who's really into wine, and she has so many bottles in her home she can't remember where that specific bottle was stored. And so she made a little app in Salesforce to help her keep track of all the different bottles, what kind of wine it was when she bought it, that kind of thing, so that when she's making dinner she can look up the right bottle of wine to have. I've also worked with folks who did something like a medication tracker. If you have a medical condition, you have to take certain medications on a regular basis. You can use Salesforce to keep track of the medicines. When is my refill up? What days do I take it? That kind of thing. I've used Salesforce to make a practice exam tracker, so it shows I can enter my practice test scores and the date that I took it, and it'll calculate, my overall score, and I can see it in a graph, how am I doing over time, that kind of thing. So I think when you're looking for hands-on practice, I would say picking a subject that you actually understand and identify with is the best way to start. And then get a dev org or a Salesforce playground and really try to build it out and work through some of the concepts in that environment. I think it will really help you understand how, not just what the concepts mean, but also how to apply them. Yeah, no problem. Thank you all so much for joining. I mean, we're at the end of all the content, but I'm happy to hang around if there's more questions. Again, if you want to book time with me, you can get that 30-minute call at Calendly. 30 minutes, and you can download the study guide and everything from my website. Yeah, thank you all so much. Good luck in your certification journeys and your career journeys. If there's anything I can do to help, please don't be shy. I love talking to you all. Everyone I get on the phone with is like, I'm so sorry I went over time. I'm like, no, I'm enjoying this. Let's keep talking. Um, I love to see others succeed, and Salesforce for me has been such a blessing in my life to give me flexibility. I work remote. I own my home now. There's a lot of things that I've been able to do because of my entry into this career path. So I'm very excited to help all the rest of you get that kind of satisfaction from your jobs. Yeah, thanks. Like I said, I'll keep hanging around. If folks have more questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. And thank you again for joining.